Hello, my name is Norman and welcome to Danbury Parish Church, St John the Baptist. It's quite an old church. Behind me is the very oldest part of the church. For this walk around the churchyard to see some of the hidden nature, I've asked Irene to come along. This is Irene. Hello Irene, turn around and show your status.
There you are. A volunteer tree warden.
So first of all, we're going to look at these 4 lime trees here. Hello again, here we are. These are 6 lime trees behind me. 1 behind me, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 down this direction. These were planted in 2 batches, some in 1758 and the others in 1763. So that makes them about 250 years old. And they were cost 5 shillings in 1758 and 6 shillings in 1763. Could you say why they would have been planted here?
Yeah, lime trees, particularly the common lime, don't mind an annual haircut. In fact, they tolerate it very well. So they're providing an element of green. If you allowed the trees to grow to their full size, they'd be 45 metres. They'd dwarf the tree and probably tip the foundations over.
Right.
So by pollarding them every year, then they actually reduce that strain on the ground.
Yeah.
And they look green and attractive.
This splendid rowan tree, fine example. Unfortunately, it's rather interrupted the wall here, as you can see. By human hand or bird, do you think?
I reckon this is a bird dropping tree because the fruit is very attractive to birds. You can eat the berries, but not raw. And you can make an excellent jelly with them, apparently. I haven't tried yet. You can actually make almost like an elderflower type syrup with the flowers as well. So, but I reckon a bird would have dropped it outside the line of the wall. And unfortunately, as the girth of the tree increased, they needed to adjust the wall to accommodate it.
Cut the railing as well.
Yeah. I mean, rowans have been associated for many centuries, millennia even, as a tree which helps to dispel darkness. So the Druids would certainly have viewed it as such, and that belief has extended to Christianity. So that's why it's been allowed to stay here. Beautiful tree.
Here is a mulberry tree. These are quite rare. And this particular one is quite old. You can tell by the ways the trunks have had to be locked and cleaned and so forth. But of course this is a black mulberry, and they have absolutely delicious fruits.
Caught red-handed. Necessarily as old as it looks. The reason for that is that they're propagated by cutting about 1.5 meters length of branch of an old mulberry tree, and these guys live up to 500 years, possibly longer. So then this truncheon is planted 0.5 meter in the ground, leaving 1 meter above, which then branches will sprout from that. It takes about 20 years to fruit. Delicious fruit, but you won't find them in supermarkets.
So you reckon this one's
So three yew trees, one which looks rather poorly. I gather it's been having some intravenous treatment. I'm not entirely sure how successful that's going to be. But Norman can tell us a little bit about the history of these.
Yes, I mean every churchyard should have yews. Irene tells me the ones on your left are both male, and this one she's just discovered is female with the berries. The male ones don't have berries. These were planted. I'm not sure in which order, but the first one was planted during the Great War to celebrate the arrival of General Allenby in Jerusalem. And the second one the following year, 1918, to celebrate the armistice. And the third one, I don't know which the third one is, was planted in 1920 to mark the Versailles Treaty, peace treaty, the so-called peace treaty.
So possibly you're thinking it's the poorly one
The
here.
war to end wars.
Yeah.
But,
Traditionally, yews were seen in churchyards because not only is the foliage very poisonous, but also the berries are really poisonous. It's a fabulous elastic wood, so we're used for the long shaft of longbows and for expensive furniture. But yes, because of their poisonous nature, not really favoured anywhere else. You certainly wouldn't want livestock grazing on them, they would die. So modern day uses for the yew, it's used an extract as treatment for breast cancer, chemotherapy. So it does have other benefits other than the longbow. I've just been speaking to Clive, who manages the churchyard here, about precisely what treatment was done to the yew tree. And apparently fertiliser was applied in spikes around the ground, just to try and promote some growth. This apparently went from green to brown almost overnight. So there are some good signs of regrowth. We're just debating what's going to be the best course of action for this. And I guess leave it a year. It's not going to fall over because it's a really elastic wood. It's not like an ash tree that's going to drop branches on people's heads. And it's certainly some good regrowth at the base. So let's wait and see. It may need some more radical cutting back just to preserve the health of the tree this time next year.
On the gravestones, lichens. You can see there are several types here. Yellow, browns, greens. Attempts have been made to suppress it with application of various things, but it hasn't happened, and they continue growing. But there are others around here that are particularly white ones. And Irene and I were looking at one, and we weren't sure whether it was a case of white paint that had been splattered or whether it was lichen. And it appears to be lichen.
Yeah. It's a strange little organism. It's a partnership between a fungus and an algae. So the fungus is able to extract nutrients from rainwater, and the algae uses its photosynthetic abilities to provide food for both of them. And supposed to be a good indicator of clean air. The food source of the footman moth.
Splendid tree. And what kind of tree is this, Irene?
Well, I'm speculating, but I think it's a scarlet oak, and if it is, it's quite an unusual specimen. They don't apparently live very much longer than 100 years. Originally came from the Appalachian Mountains in America. So I'm dying to see what colour it turns in the autumn, because I have to say I have not observed it in the autumn. But it certainly is a beautiful tree. And I would suspect getting close to 100 years old, which is unusual. So the leaf is quite an unusual shape. That's why I think it's a scarlet oak.
This quite interesting tree, as you look at the bark, also has some other things that are growing alongside. An incipient oak tree down there. And then round the other side you can see a holly. And these harebells spread out. But what tree do you think it is?
Apparently 200 years, if they're in a good place. Plenty of nutrients here, probably, not to put too fine a point on it. And obviously, perhaps the soil is quite good. So, beautiful tree.
Beautiful
and looks
tree.
very healthy, which is good.
Wonderful, wonderful show of these lovely yellow flowers, a swathe of them. These are autumn hawksbit, and a lovely show. We've got and then by contrast you have these delightful little mauve flowers, some kind of hawksbill, and if you look around the corners and the various places, lots of these charming little wildflowers that rival anything you see in a garden, if you've got the eyes to look at it.
There you go. So we'll finish where we started with the limes. So just a couple of little bits. These are excellent fodder for cattle and sheep. So you'll often see these planted in avenues to farms. But also the wood here is very close grained, so used for sounding boards in musical instruments, and astonishingly to help construct mosquito planes in World War II. There you go.
Well, thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye now.